There you go. Okay, cool. So, hi everyone. It's Puru and Andrew here. So, just to do an intro. So, Andrew and I used to do a radio show when we were councillors, just doing a bit of deep dive into issues in Tower Hamlets. So obviously both of us have moved on we're into greener pastures, as they say, but we still live in Tower Hamlets, and we do get fielded questions about things. There seems to be a bit of a vacuum in Tower Hamlets. The late Mark Baines, he used to write about a lot of issues. Mark is no longer with us and is much needed and much missed. So, in light of that, we thought we'll start up a regular video discussions about issues just to inform residents of Tower Hamlets and people wider who are interested in Tower Hamlets. We have loads of interesting people who live here, but keep their head low in Tower Hamlets, but they're quite active outside of Tower Hamlets, but interested in what goes on. So this is just to like inform everyone of the issues and do a deep dive. So today's discussion is going to be on the allocations of committees and also so what's happened is we've had I think three resignations from Aspire and two resignations of councillors from the Labour Party. So what's happened is that the large group of councillors were not grouped officially either with Aspire or with the Labour Party, and that has had an impact in terms of how the committees are made up, the majority on the council. And so we're just going to talk through that. Andrew, have I missed anything there before we go into the context of why this has happened?
Well, so the other thing to probably stay right from the beginning is that in most local authorities in the country, those resignations would have led potentially to a change of leadership. And we've seen that in other local authorities. But because Tower Hamlets is an executive mayor model of government and we directly elect our mayor, even if all of the Aspire councillors had resigned and even if they'd all joined Labour, Lutfi Rahman would still be the mayor regardless. And I think that's an important difference between us and other parts of the country.
Cool. So thanks for that. So we're going to just do a deep dive. Just do a deep dive into the context of it. And so obviously Andrew and I speak to different people. We see different aspects of social media. So so like going back into time in 2022, Labour Party lost control of the mayoralty. So John Biggs was defeated by Lutfi Rahman. So Lutfi Rahman is the Aspire mayor. But the other thing that happened was the majority of the councillors that were elected were from the Aspire Party. So I think was it 24?
24 out of the 45, yeah.
24 out of the 45 councillors were Aspire. And then you had, sorry, I've lost count now.
19 Labour, one Conservative, and one Green.
Got you. So that's 2022. So moving forward, so a lot of things have happened since 2022. So in 2023, from a Labour perspective, we had the Gaza crisis happen, the October 7th attack, and then the Labour leader Keir Starmer went on LBC radio, made a statement which a lot of Labour Party members were not happy with. I myself resigned, but a lot of councillors across the country from the Labour Party resigned from the Labour Party and they became independent, etc. A lot of Labour councils lost control as well because of that, as Andrew was speaking. So in Tower Hamlets, we had one councillor, a Labour councillor, Councillor Ayasmir St Dunstan, said that he's resigned the whip from the, although he's a Labour Party member, he resigned the whip. So he's not part of the Labour Party grouping. Then fast forward to the general election, which is this year, which was July 2024. In June, I think 2 weeks or a week before the general election, Keir Starmer made some controversial statements. There was an edited video. It was edited that was doing the rounds. It's sort of like of Keir Starmer making just talking about the fast track deportation of the Labour Party policy of fast track deportation. He happened to mention Bangladeshis, which basically caused a furore here in Tower Hamlets, which led to the resignation of one Labour councillor. I think she resigned from the party as well, Sabina Akhtar at Stepney Green. So you have two Labour councillors no longer sitting with Labour. So Labour's come down to 17, although they seem to vote with Labour all the time at the full council. And then you've got, then what happened, I think a few weeks ago, we've had three Aspire councillors, um, one after the other, sort of ish, like a sequence. So first you had Councillor Kabir Hussain, who resigned over, I think, the not decision or non-decision over temporary housing, because it seems to be not a decision. He resigned over that. Then you had the Speaker of the Council, I think it's Councillor Hussain, I think, or Ahmed.
No,
Who,
Saifuddin Khalid.
okay, apologies for that. Sorry, I'm not. I've been
I
following.
had to look it up as well.
Cool, cool. He resigned. Um, I don't know what the issue was, and then Councillor Ohid Ahmed resigned from the Spy Group. I think that was just before. Okay, what happened was Ohid Ahmed resigned just before the full council meeting. That was Wednesday.
Mhm.
Just before, I think 20 minutes before, he tweeted it out, and then I think the speaker resigned after that full council meeting. That's that's the chronology, because he didn't vote with the Aspire group
Mhm.
on a certain motion. So he didn't announce it. He kind of like, after he voted against him, he announced his resignation.
Mhm.
So that's kind of like the context of councillors resigning, etc. And so that had an impact in terms of Aspire losing majority. So we saw that at the last full council. I think they lost the motion. So normally what happened was a bit of formality where, because Aspire have the majority, any motion that happened, they'll just all put their hands up. There wasn't even a need to count, I think.
Yeah.
Motion carried or amendment carried, and that was it. So it was a bit of, it was a bit formulaic, the full council. The last one was different in the sense that they lost, and now I think there was a discussion. I picked up that people didn't know who voted which way. So that's the discussion to have as to how we're going to do the vote. The full council. So obviously they've lost the majority of the councillors. So what that means is they've lost. That has an impact on full council, but it also has an impact on the committee. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Andrew, just to talk about allocations, how that committees and allocations.
Okay. So before I go on to that, it was actually really confusing in the council meeting because they were trying to count. You could see him, Matthew, who Pure and I know very well, was like
Yeah,
trying to count, and he actually counted wrong and had to be corrected because it was very confusing. Because basically, he was having to, normally you just look at one side and you count on one side, and then the opposing parties on the other side and you count them. But in this case, you had people on both sides voting the same way, which is unusual. But the really sort of the key thing that happens next is, so in that council meeting, because there had been some changes in the membership, is it's basically something called the proportionality split. So basically, for example, on the audit committee, there are 7 councillors, and the determination as to how many of those councillors belong to from the Aspire party and how many from the Labour Party is based on their percentage of the total group. So, for example, if Aspire were 60% of the total councillors, then they would have 60% of the councillors on the audit committee. Slightly more complicated than that because obviously it doesn't quite split 60%. So up until this week, every single committee of Tower Hamlets Council had a majority of Aspire members on it. And surprise, surprise, they also voted themselves or one of their members to be the chair of the committee. So basically, every single committee had a majority and also had an Aspire councillor in charge. And that's also important because you get, a lot of extra money, something called special responsibility allowance if you're a chair of a committee. So Aspire were in full control, getting lots of extra money. And now because of this split, because now they're basically dropped to 21 councillors, it does mean they're no longer, on the majority. So, for example, on a committee of 7 councillors, they now only have 3 councillors. A Labour have 3, and then the ungrouped councillors, of which there are 7 in total, have 1. So, in theory, if the Labour councillors ganged up with the one ungrouped councillor, they could outvote the Aspire councillors and basically take control of the committee, which means they could have one of their own as chair of the committee. Which again financially is very important and would mean that chair is then got some responsibility for then deciding how the committee works. So some committees like planning and licensing, that doesn't make a lot of difference because they're non-political, but there are other committees like audit and scrutiny where if you have a good chair, actually they could have a real impact on the council and the way the council operates.
It's kind of interesting. I think Aspire in anticipation. I think they probably knew this was coming. I think at the last AGM they gave the chair of the licensing committee was it to Conservative Councillor Peter Gold? Is that correct or
No, so
no?
Peter basically unofficially has always been the chair of for as long as I can
Okay,
remember, Peter has basically been the unofficial chair of licensing because he has so much expertise in that area and experience in that area. But I mean, I'll triple check. But as far as I'm aware, he's never actually been the chair. So he's never actually paid for all the extra work that he does. So
gotcha. Okay. We'll double check on that. That was like an oral report I received, and I should double check on that. But I think they've been this sort of like making noises to the Green Council as well, Natalie
hey,
as
actually,
well.
no, I just there's actually a licensing committee tonight, and Peter is chairing it. So you were right.
Okay, cool.
Peter is actually chairing licensing. So
So I think Aspire in anticipation of that
mhm.
that they are going to lose majority have been making overtures to the Conservative councillor Peter Gold, and also the report I've heard to Natalie, the Green councillor as well. So I think there's been a bit of shimmying. I think they saw this coming, etc. So there has been a report that's been published, isn't it? That shows, well, I'll put that up on the video as well. That shows a loss of allocations, but be, be, before we go on to committees, etc., Andrew, I just want to like clarify because there's a lot of confusion. And this is something I've come across in Tower Hamlets in the sense that we have a mayoral system and then we have councillors, and there's a lot of confusion. So a lot of residents, for whatever reason, think that their councillor could go in and order things about, get things done. So I still come across people and say, I'm going to go into the council and fix it up, etc. And I try to explain to them, look, it doesn't work like that. Like my understanding when I was a Labour councillor and a Labour mayor, that our role was advisory, that the mayor could ignore um, whatever issues we raise. But obviously, he's a politician. He knows he needs to face an election. Also, there's internal issues. He's got primary within the Labour Party as well. So obviously, it's in his interest, or her, or his or she, in her interest, to actually address issues that are raised by councillors. But we don't. So the councillors are more like backbench MPs in this uh, system, where the mayor actually is like the central government, like the prime minister with no cabinet. He or she basically decides everything, and all councillors can do is raise issues through the various committees or at full council, etc. Andrew, do you want to do a bit of reflection on that? Because I just find it really bizarre that people still think that councillors have a lot of power in the system.
So as a councillor for 8 years, and especially as an opposition councillor, I had I had no power. I could ask questions. I could be difficult. I could have some influence, but I had no power. But I think it's just worth talking about the few areas where councillors do have some impact. So the two areas where councillors do actually have some impact is licensing committees, I've already said, also the planning committees as well. Again, in theory, they're meant to be non-political. And, especially in the planning committees, you are voting on some potentially really big planning and controversial planning applications. Like, for example, a Chinese embassy is going to be coming back to a committee sometime soon. So those are areas where councillors can have some impact, but they're not necessarily directly political. There's one other area where councillors, actually, there's two other areas where councillors can have an impact. So one of which is the budget. So the mayor presents his budget to a full council meeting. And if 2/3 of the councillors vote against that budget, they can reject the budget. What they can't do is adopt their own budget. All they can simply say is, no, go back and redo it. So in theory, if 2/3 voted against and voted against and voted against, then they might force the mayor into a budget which is sort of more to the liking of councillors. But that requires 2/3 majority, which is very difficult to get. And the only other area where they have a little bit of impact is something called call-ins. So if you have 5 councillors who object to a decision made by the mayor and cabinet, they can call it in, and it goes to a committee of the scrutiny subcommittee, and basically they can ask questions of officers. But all they can do is make recommendations back to the mayor. They can't actually overturn a mayoral decision. So actually, their only real power is maybe delay things by a week, and to kind of make life more difficult for the mayor. And I think that's really the main role of councillors, is if they wanted to do it, they could make the life for the administration and the mayor more difficult. And that's where, particularly if you had good chairs of like scrutiny and audit committee, and if they worked closely with officers, they could make Lutfer's life more difficult. They would force him to have to explain more things. But that's only the ability really to ask questions. It's not the power to stop the mayor from doing anything.
So in effect, I know like there's been loads of social media thing. I actually had a argument with someone on one of these WhatsApp groups, which are very time wasting, but for some reason both Andrew and I sometimes respond and like, oh, they've lost control of the council, and I'm like, look, it's an executive mayoral system.
Yeah.
The things are gonna carry on, but what it does do is make life a bit more difficult um, for the mayor in terms of like motions to full council, highlighting an issue, embarrassing the mayor into action,
Mhm.
um, generating publicity as well, which makes it interesting for local groups as well now because you can actually bring petitions to full council, and if you get over 2,000 um, signatures, that generates a half an hour debate for which any councillor could put a motion in, um, and that makes it much more interesting. So this is an opportunity for local groups to actually bring issues that they're passionate about. Like recently, we had the community laundry in the Weavers ward, which they brought a petition to full council to get community rent for to be recognised as a community asset, and for the council to apply a community rent, not commercial rent, and that was successful. That had support across everyone. I think. And I think no one opposed it. So this is kind of like an opportunity for campaign groups to actually bring up issues. It could be borough wide, it could be specific, like the Weavers community laundrette. So that makes it much more interesting. Also, I think there's a bylaw or something like that that if you have 800 signatures, you could ask the chair of overviewing scrutiny to bring put an item on agenda.
Yeah.
I thought, is that correct?
I
I
think
think
it's
that
over 1,000, I thought. But yeah, there are various things you can ask for when you raise a petition. So if you get over 30, then you get 6 minutes at a council meeting. And if you get over 2,000, then you get a lot more time. What's going to be very interesting is actually the biggest petition recently in terms of number of signatures is actually the dog one about the dog
Yeah.
public health protection order. So that's like the administration going against, dog lovers, which is quite a large group in Tower Hamlets.
Well,
So,
it's going to be interesting because it was actually Labour, I think, who were campaigning for it. I think I've been looking at the social media. I think the Labour group leader wanted to bring it, and I think he got trumped by the mayor,
mhm.
and then the public have trumped both of them.
Yeah, no,
So
because I'm kind of vaguely aware of some of the people who were involved in the sort of the petition because I gave them some advice some time ago, actually to do it on the council website, not to do it on one of the other sort of petition websites. But yeah, it's a very organized group of people who've never really got involved in politics until, something, was raised about dogs. So I think that's going to be a really interesting one because that's not really a normal sort of Tower Hamlets political issue, how we deal with dogs. So
yeah, and that's an opportunity for any issues, and I think it's an opportunity for yourselves on the Isle of Dogs. I know, like we basically there's an issue of overdevelopment
mhm.
there, and with the local plan as well, with the height restrictions being removed. And again, that's an opportunity for specific issues in specific areas to be highlighted and forcing a response um, from the powers that be, so to speak. Um, so, do you want to just run through what the power of a committee? So, one of the things that could happen is that Aspire, who control the committee chairs,
Mhm.
lose that because they've lost the majority. So, normally what happens is, Andrew, is my understanding is at the beginning of the year, the chair is elected.
Mhm.
It's something that me and you had a brief discussion about. Halfway through a committee, can a committee chair be dethroned and a new chair be appointed?
Yeah, so I mean, the committee memberships will change immediately or as soon as people get nominated for committees. So, one of the things that will be going on right now is kind of trying to work out, given the change in sort of the allocations. So, Aspire will have to work out they're going to lose a member from most committees, so they're going to have to pick new members. Labour kind of about staying about the same, but again, some of their membership will change. So really, the key issue that the seven ungrouped councillors, the Green, the Conservative, the two ex-Labour, the three ex-Aspire, what are they going to do? Are they going to do a deal with the Labour Party to take control of some of these committees? And Labour should be talking to them right now to kind of come up with some deal whereby, yeah, they take as much control of as many committees as they possibly can, for a variety of reasons, one of which is the financial one I've already kind of talked about. So it's a good thing because, as I said, Peter Gold has in effect been the chair of licensing for, more than 10 years now. So at least last he's been paid for that job. And that will also apply in other areas. But I think that the real importance of a committee chair is their ability to then work with officers to then kind of get more information or more things on the agenda than might have been the case with an Aspire chair of a committee, because these are formal roles. What I'm not entirely clear about, and I haven't had time to look at it yet, is that yes, the membership will change almost immediately, but does that mean that chair automatically changes? And I'm not sure, but that wouldn't stop the councillors from sort of saying, because the membership has changed, we need a new chair. So I'm pretty sure, again, if I were Labour, I would basically be planning at the next committee meeting for all of these committees to kind of, raise at the beginning of the meeting a request to change the chair, assuming they've done a deal with the opposition, with the ungroup councillors. And if Labour have not started those conversations, I'd be very surprised. But yeah, we'll find out. Be interesting to watch like the next committee meetings just at the beginning to see whether anything has changed or not. But coming back to the powers of a chair, if you have a good chair, then they definitely can have an impact. But that does require picking somebody who A, knows what they're doing, and B, is willing to do something about it, you could easily have, a Labour chair or an ungrouped chair who's basically, doesn't make much of a difference. So it's really up to the chair to kind of drive the change.
I think one of the things that skews it, which I found quite disheartening, is the financial reward that comes with these committee chairs. So
Mhm.
what in effect, what happens is you have people lobbying for those chairs, not because of they're particularly interested in the subject matter,
Yeah.
etc. It's just the financial packet. And what normally happens is um, opposition groupings are bought off within, say, a political grouping by the leader um, by giving them these chairs, but which basically means that there isn't that effective scrutiny. So, um, theoretically, you're supposed to have really good. If the opposition does take control of the committee chairs, you'll have some probing and some qualitative difference. But don't be surprised because of the internal politics of the local Labour Party that that doesn't happen. And just to remind everyone that we've had the general election gone out of the way. So what's going to happen now is that the local Labour Party is going to now focus on picking a mayoral candidate to challenge the current mayor, and also pick a panel of Labour councillors for all the seats to be contested. So internally, the focus is on that, and don't be surprised if that basically spills over in terms of the allocations of those committee chairs, etc. So it's going to be really, really interesting. From my understanding, just speaking to people, both the the three current Labour councillors who want to challenge the Mayor Lutfur Rahman, who want to be the Labour candidate. One is Siraj al-Islam, the group leader, and the other one, the name I've heard is Abdullah, who's the backbench. Yeah, he's famous on social media. You can find him on social media. He's apparently throwing his hat in the ring. And the other one is Mark Francis that I've heard. I don't know whether that's true or not, but those are the three names that have been bandied around. The other fourth person, who's not a current councillor, but who's quite famous, active on social media, um, uh, trolling Andrew, is Chris Worrell. That's the name. Uh,
Okay.
so, so, so that's the kind of lineup. I don't know if there's any more other names. If anybody's interested, you could DM Andrew, and you could mention your name as well.
Yeah, so I've heard three of those four names as in the frame. So, um, and yeah, and I mean, the other key point is that, we're less than 2 years away from the next local election. And if parties want to get, re-elected or get new members elected, they need to pick their candidates within the next 6 months, because then they will need at least a year to be able to introduce themselves to people. Because traditionally what's happened is, political parties have picked way too late, and basically the candidates just don't have enough time to get themselves known by the general public. So yes, if I were Labour wanting to win back the mayoralty, I'd do my selection by May of next year.
Yeah, and I think that's what they're on timetable for. So I think what normally used to happen is, and I'm just a slight tangent. What normally happens is the London Labour Party, so that's the Labour Party for all London boroughs, normally runs these selections. And what normally happens is it's probably because of the alphabetical order. Tower Hamlets seems to be right at the bottom when they do the timetable, that they finish, they go from one London borough to another London borough to another London borough. And the reason being is you need some external oversight, just in case things go wrong, and someone could step in as the umpire in the process. So my understanding is because Tower Hamlets is now marginal, whereas the rest of the London boroughs are more or less safe Labour seats, they're going to prioritise Tower Hamlets in terms of the selection of the mayoral candidate, and also the selection of councillors. Um, Um, any other observations, Andrew? You want to come in on that?
Yeah, so I'd agree with you in terms of like sort of the importance of Tower Hamlets for Labour within London, because I have spoken to Labour people elsewhere in London, and I think they are sort of fascinated also by Tower Hamlets politics and the fact that that basically that they have lost, that Labour has lost control of Tower Hamlets, which in theory should be a safe Labour area. It's not like it's a Conservative fight or a Liberal Democrat fight. It's basically losing something which historically has always been a Labour area. So I think that sort of makes it of special interest um, to the rest of Labour in London. So I think that, and also, a lot of other, a lot of Labour people actually live in Tower Hamlets. A lot of the current members of the current government or people who work in Parliament live in Tower Hamlets as well. So this will be of special interest to Labour.
Oh, so I think that's the topics covered in terms of allocations. There'll be changes, but they're not going to be radical changes. The mayor, to summarize, the mayor will still be pushing, will be able to push his agenda through. It's just going to be much more difficult. That's what it is. And again, just like I explained, in terms of Labour Party, normally uses committee chairs to hold cohesiveness within the group. The Aspire Party would normally would do that as well. I'm just sort of like speculating. So they've lost that kind of a leverage now, or extra button that they could use, or extra tool that they could use to bring cohesiveness within their group. If they lose that committee chair, there isn't that kind of like reward that they could give to councillors who haven't got a cabinet position to cooperate. So it'd be kind of interesting how that plays along, so to speak, whether that has an impact in terms of the greater cohesiveness of the Aspire group, whether that adds to the cohesiveness of the Labour group or doesn't. Yeah, I explained, because of the internal machinations, it could not as well. And also, the other thing to watch out for, I think, is the two, and that's the thing that I've always tell people, is watch out for the two Labour independents. They're very as you know, I spoke to one directly. I spoke to or a friend of mine spoke to another indirectly. And they have their own demands on the Labour Party. They're not happy with certain things, etc. And I think um, that increases their leverage as well. So it'd be interesting as to see what happens um, with that. Um, something to watch out for. Um, so in our next discussion, we're not going to do these weekly. We're probably fortnightly, or a bit more. The next discussion is going to be the best value inspection. Um, so Andrew and I are going to have a discussion, do a deep dive over it, because there's a lot of rumors flying around. I had a phone call, someone saying, Peru, get ready, it's all collapsing. We need to. There needs to be some other force created. I go, no, no one's going anywhere. No one's getting removed. Just and I'm not interested. But that just shows the kind of speculating that surrounded the best value inspection. So Andrew and I are going to do a deep dive um, into that. We both of us have been following it quite closely, and and just talk about the context of it, the different narratives as to how it's come about. So there's two narratives out there as to why Michael Gove sent the inspectors in to Tower Hamlets, and then look at the actual process of what best value inspection is. Tower Hamlets is not the only council that had best value inspectors going in. We've had them in Birmingham, we've had them in Nottingham as well, two Labour-run councils, and then what happens if the report is not satisfactory, and look at those scenarios. And again, Tower Hamlets has been there before, where um, the inspection wasn't satisfactory, and then commissioners were sent in to take over some functions of the council. So we'll just talk through that. Also talk about the court case or the legal challenge the council has put in and what that actually means for everyone. That'll come out. But thanks everyone for watching this. And if you've got any questions, you could either DM Andrew direct. He's available on Twitter. Or you could DM me direct. I don't think Elon Musk has changed the rules or something like that. People can DM people, I think. So that's you could DM either of us if you want to give us any information. If anybody in the Labour Party or Aspire wants to get their anonymous views heard, you're more than welcome to send Andrew and I anonymous messages on WhatsApp. We're on various groups, or you can send us to them, and we'll verify those messages before we discuss those. So feel free to. So the next topic we're going to discuss is the best value inspection of Tower Hamlets Council and what that actually means. Thanks everyone, and take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.